Thank you so much for being here today on the Sure Parenting podcast. I love showcasing other moms and women that have a message to help other moms, So today I get to interview a fellow author and I'm super, super excited about it. Ziya, could you introduce yourself for us?
Hi, my name is Ziya, and I've now published 5 books. 4 of them are a children's book series set, and they've developed from a background in yoga, and just offering the world a little more kindness and consideration for each other, celebrating our uniqueness and our differences, anti-bullying messages, things of that sort that I've found to be incredibly important over my journey working with children. I started working with kiddos when I was 9. And at 16, I found what I thought was going to be my forever job, working with individuals on the autism spectrum as a behavioral interventionist and consultant. And then after my son was born, I started doing home daycare and raising the kiddos in our community. And then I became a yoga teacher. And the first job that I was offered as a yoga instructor was in a high school setting. And so obviously there's a pattern.
Really quick, I want you to repeat. The first job was at a high school setting doing what?
Working with individuals with all abilities.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, my very first yoga job, of course, came full circle and put me right back in touch with individuals on the spectrum and with all abilities. So I've had unique experiences with our youth. And I've noticed the common threads and the things that trouble them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to do something that was bigger than the 15 kids that I would get in my after school programs or the 75 girls in the Girl Scouts or whatever it was. I needed another way to be able to get more positivity and love and happiness and perspective and joy into the hands of kiddos.
Yeah.
And
if you were to verbalize some of their concerns, what do you think that would come up as?
They're images of themselves.
Okay. So and really knowing how to see themselves in a positive light.
Yeah. And most of that comes from outside perspectives, right? The things that those little seeds that are planted, whether intentionally or not intentionally, from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when they get into the school setting, that's amplified because now the parents don't have as much control over the filtration of the information that's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the books that I published is called Reflections of Me. And it is about how if we could see ourselves through the eyes of our loved ones, that we would love ourselves that much more, because we can't see ourselves when we're laughing at a funny joke or the way our eyes light up when we see something that excites us, right? There's all these little things that we don't catch when we look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that we're building those positive images and those positive self-beliefs. So that's one of the 4 books in the series.
That's amazing. One of the things I find when I'm working with families is a lot of that unintentional messaging comes from a wounded inner child. Would you say that your books could speak to the inner child in us as adults too?
You just gave me chills, because one of my biggest goals is that I'm sure you have, but there are some really amazing children's books out there that when you read them, you're like, oh, I needed that reminder today too.
Yeah.
So thank you, whatever that book was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that happen to me several times reading children's books to my own kids. And I'm hopeful that these books will offer that same experience, because the messages aren't necessarily only for elementary age children. They're really for all of us. But the books are geared towards that age group because, there's only a couple sentences on the page and they're very colorful and bright and fun. But here in Astoria, I found out that there's a group of high schoolers who are going to begin doing story time at the library, and they're going to be reading to the toddlers. So I'm super, super excited that those seeds will also be planted for the high schoolers who may not have gotten it in their early ages. And maybe those seeds can take root for them as well.
And it just creates such an incredible ripple effect. So definitely, I cannot wait to get my hands on the Reflections of You. But you have 3 others. Could you tell us just a little bit about those 2?
Sure. So Real Life Superheroes is super fun because it talks us through how you don't have to wear a mask or have a cape in order to be a superhero, that there are things that you can do in your community and for your family and for your friends and for the strangers and for the kids sitting alone at the table at lunch or not playing with anyone at the playground, that make you a superhero. That when you take these small acts of kindness and offer them to somebody else, that you are a superhero, and that ripple effect will continue into other people's days. And you never know what people are going through, and you never know how one act of kindness can totally shift someone's perspective or their lives or the way that they think about themselves. So that's Real Life Superheroes.
I love that. And I love I imagine a similar effect. When I was at least a decade ago, I started a gratitude practice. And one of the things I noticed is in the beginning, it was like, okay, I have to sit down, I have to think about what am I grateful for. And then after a couple weeks, it was like things just became I became very aware. I would notice so many more pieces of my life in the world around me that I could be grateful for. And so I imagine a book like Superheroes it does the same. It's like, oh, look, that person's doing a superhero deed. Look at me, I just did a superhero deed. Or, oh, there's an opportunity to do. And to shift that perspective, I think could create a lot more camaraderie in schools between students.
I agree. That's awesome. And the fact that you brought up gratitude right now is super perfect because the next book is Gratitude Magic.
Yeah.
So, I was actually having a conversation with a friend yesterday, a fellow yoga instructor, and we were talking about how sometimes in the depth of our stuff and the busyness of our lives and how dark things get sometimes, when people talk about focusing on gratitude, right?
Oh, yeah.
It seems like, or you're like, yeah, I know there's a lot to be grateful for, but that doesn't change how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And we were having a conversation about how gratitude is like super high up on this meter scale, and it's not always obtainable. So I started a gratitude practice when I was going through some hormonal shifts and stuff after recent hysterectomy. And I told myself I was only to write about things that I was grateful for. It had to be that day, and I couldn't repeat.
Ooh,
so I started this list of
tough.
things that I was grateful for, and it's like a sprinkling, right? Mm-hmm. It's not this huge game changer that's going to make your whole life better. But what it is a reminder. It's a focus point. And when you start to bring yourself into those moments where you can focus on those little things that you're grateful for, you start to see more of them. You start to create more of them. You start to think, well, what am I going to put on that list for today? What am I going to be grateful for today? So if it's not automatically there, maybe you're going to create it, right? So Gratitude Magic walks us through like the child's version of that, where it just starts to make you think about our thoughts and how our thoughts have power. And if our brain's going to be busy all day anyways, why not kind of focus it and tell it what to pay attention to? Because what we pay attention to grows, right? That we see more of it. We create more of it.
And as humans in survival, which so many kids in schools, I was a public school teacher at a Title I school, and a lot of the kids were dealing with elements of survival that like you wouldn't think a first grader would have to worry about. And and when our brains are in that state for a long enough time, we really get stuck focusing on that hypervigilance and looking for the problem and looking for the threat. And that's not a
Survive.
yeah, like it's survival. Like, well, yay, I'm glad your brain can do that. Our brains are amazing that they can do that. And we're allowed, even in those situations, to give ourselves just a little respite and enjoy one moment of peace or kindness or beauty or anything. We're allowed to have that too. We just have to do that on purpose because our brain doesn't necessarily always naturally gravitate that way.
Definitely.
Oh, I wish I had these when I was teaching first grade.
I would have loved that. And hopefully, you know, they will be in first grade classrooms.
Yeah.
My experience with schools in Las Vegas was that I was working with individuals with autism. And so I would shadow in the classrooms and create the bonds and connections between home and school.
Yeah.
I also did observation hours because all of my elective classes, when I was getting my bachelor's degree, all of my elective classes were education classes. So, and then when I started teaching yoga, I started teaching to children in the schools during the day and then also in after programs. And I had to pay attention to and notice little things like the kids didn't want to take their shoes off. Maybe because they didn't have matching socks or their feet stunk.
Socks, or yeah,
right. There's all little things that we might not think about if we're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So I started purposely mismatching my socks and telling them that that's cool. My socks never match either. Oh, like, you know what I mean? Or being like, yep, sometimes people fart, or, oh, yep, feet stink sometimes. Like just really humanizing the experience to take away from things that they would typically be made fun of for, because then other people go, oh, that's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so beautiful to have that experience as a child, to have somebody come into your life and help you feel like you're not flawed, help you feel like you're safe.
Or that it's okay that you are. Yeah.
Or that the things that are flaws are acceptable. Like you're not hopelessly flawed, I guess I should say, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, we that's how bodies work. Like that's
allowed
here.
Your body's working, your body's doing what bodies do, and that's good. Like it's telling you things. Let's pay attention to those things instead of like shaming them.
Right.
Like,
I love that.
That's what that pose is supposed to do. Yep. It's called wind relieving pose for a reason.
Yeah, right. Oh, I love that. And I think there's been some really cool, you know, smaller studies done on mindfulness in the classroom and the impact it has on the whole educational experience, to take the time that we feel like we never have enough time, but to take the time to intentionally become aware of our bodies and our brains and connecting the two. And like the whole yoga practice, I think, is such an interesting avenue and so unique in what it does. It's able to be modified to be accessible for everybody. And it's not about competing against other people and trying to win. It's really this personal journey. And I some of the coolest people I've ever met have been yoga instructors that I'm like, oh man, you know how to speak to my soul. So that sounds incredible. And what a fun part of your journey to then be able to create almost like a guide for other adults to be able to share those ideas and concepts with other children. It's really cool.
Yeah. So one part that makes it easier, and like you said, like in classrooms and stuff, there's never really enough time and teachers only have so far of a reach. But one of the things that's missing is the access to those tools.
Yeah.
Being able to have easy grab tools that help you deliver those messages. So that was really important to me in creating these books as well. So I followed a format in each book that's the same throughout. So the book starts off with a yoga philosophy, which is just like a couple bullet points about how you can practice this philosophy, and then an affirmation. And then you flip through and read the story. And at the end of the book, there's a call to action. So in the call to action section, there are different ways that you can not just read about this stuff, but actually be about it, implement it into your life.
That's
So there's mindful mini meditations. There's a bingo style chart, like blackout bingo style chart in the back of the superhero book with all these different like random acts of kindness that you can perform. So like take a photocopy and give this to a friend and see if you can both complete it. Or you can write directly in the book. There's places to list your gratitude. You can have it inside your book, or you can grab paper and obviously do it that way as well if you want to preserve the book or pass it on or whatever that might be. But I wanted it to be a very interactive experience. So there is space to journal, to write, to draw, to create, to practice inside of the books themselves.
And it lets kids really own this learning. It becomes theirs instead of just another thing they're told throughout the day. They get to really personalize it at that point. So I think that's a really great concept. There's one more book though, right?
There is. There's one more book. Okay. It's called Namaste You Say. This one is really about celebrating our similarities and our differences, because I think, and this one was obviously from a lot of the tragic things that have been going on over the last few years. This one was born with riots on TV and people feeling like they had to stand up for themselves in ways that no human being should have to stand up for themselves. And it just popped into my head and I just went and started writing. And this one is just about honoring that place within us that is the same, but also celebrating our differences and knowing that our uniquenesses are beautiful and wonderful and something to celebrate, but that doesn't make us better than or separate from other people. If we put ourselves in boxes, we limit who we can love and who we can be friends with and who we can learn from. Right. So keeping that door open and noticing that no matter what, we all have that same place of quiet and love and calm within us. I don't know. It's just such an important message to me. And I really, really think that every freaking human in the world needs those more of that. We need more of that.
And it's amazing what happens when you do. I saw a post, oh man, I'm not going to remember who said it. I will put a little screenshot in here of it after we're done recording, but she is a content creator and she had posted something, somebody took it and reposted it without any credit, just word for word. And she said, I'd like credit. And somebody's comment to that was like, kind of get over yourself, like who even cares? And she like lays this all out. Like she felt offended. She felt like she wanted to defend herself. And then she's like, you know what? I'm going to sit with that and process that part of me until I can be empathetic towards them. And so her response was more along the lines of, you know what? It totally makes sense. Like, I'm sure it seems really petty and ridiculous. And yet it's important to me that I get credit for the work that I've put in, whether it's like a whole book or a Facebook post. And, that's just kind of how it feels for me. And she wasn't like cowing down, but she wasn't aggressive. She was just like, this is what I feel. And it's okay that we disagree. And the response was so that she was able to elicit out of this person who started off so like, yeah, like she's like, you're totally right. I hadn't thought about it that way. And you deserve credit. I hope you have a nice day. And it was just this instant, like she described it as like drawing out their humanity. And it like clearly impacted me.
Yeah.
Because we do all have that humanity in us. And when you see somebody who is in fight mode, especially a kid, you have to remember that they're there for a reason. They are feeling like they have to defend themselves. It's not about fighting back or overpowering them. How can we help each other feel safe enough that we can come down to a place where we can relate and be safe to have this discussion, whatever it is, so that natural fight response isn't the necessary response in that moment, so that we can solve this problem in, a better way, a safer way. But it starts with creating the safety, and you can't create safety for somebody if you don't even see them as human. So
Right. And
that,
online, it's so easy to
yeah,
not see people as humans.
it
So the
is,
fact that she was able to co-regulate through a computer screen
right?
and some words is like so amazing.
Goals.
Yeah, that's incredible. You know,
She's, yeah, I was like, whoa, this actually blew me away. I'm so glad you shared this. It was like 6 slides that she shared on Instagram.
oh wow.
Like, wow. Um, but it was just really beautiful. And that was just yesterday, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And I think that that's the kind of stuff we get to see more of when we have a message like Namaste, you say.
Yeah. And honestly, it's such a weird thing being in a space of creation
Mhm.
because nothing that I could say is original, right? Like everyone has these ideas and they all parallel and there's like this consciousness, right? This what is it, like hive mind thing where like, multiple people might have ideas but word it differently or present it differently. And I'm not saying that what I have created is better than or more than or different than anything else out there that exists. What I'm saying is we need more of it. We
Yes,
need more of it.
we
And
do.
that
And sometimes
I
it's the third or
absolutely,
fifth or 12th time you hear something that it finally clicks and you're like, oh, that I've heard that before. And it
yeah.
finally, your body is in the place to receive that information. So
And I've
there's never
heard,
too much of a positive message.
yeah. And I've heard too, people say, like, I come to your classes because your words speak to me. I
Mhm.
come to your classes because the way it finally came across to me when you delivered it. I've heard it before. I've heard other people say it, but something about this time, this moment with you is when it clicked.
Yeah.
And that just there's people for each person's
Yes.
message. There's a group that that will receive it differently from my mouth than from someone else's mouth and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I totally agree also with your statement about how she was like, no, I do feel like I should be acknowledged for the work that I've done because that too is so easily like people brush that off so much or they undervalue themselves and don't they're like, who am I, right? And of course,
Mhm.
even through my creative process that happened several times, like, who am I that people are going to log on to this Kickstarter and put in money for me to help donate these books to schools and libraries and foster care facilities and mental and emotional health facilities and whatever this people feel that the audience should be. I want to help deliver it there.
Yeah.
And um kind of a shift too because I believe in more of these messages.
Yeah.
I believe in more connection and community, and I believe that we can band together to do that. And so I took myself completely out of it because, of course, we have all of these limiting thoughts and these unhealed traumas that come up and to say, like, who are you? Sit down, get back in
Yeah.
line, get
Be
back in
quiet.
line, right? And here I am traveling in a motor home with my 2 kids, writing books and being like, please help me share these with the world. And I'm like, who the hell are you? Sit down, get back in line. And I have to fight through that to be like, no, this is important for our community. This
It
is
is.
important for our youth. And there are people who will stand with me on this and who will help and support this mission.
Absolutely. And if not you, it will be somebody else. So why not you? You got the calling, you received that download, the inspiration to create. Why not? Like
And
you
there's
wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't for you.
right. And there has been so many people who've been like, wow, you're doing that. That's really cool. I started to write a book once. Maybe I should go finish it. And I'm like, go finish it. Let's do this. Like, yes, moms, single moms, married moms, like busy moms, working moms, like follow your dreams. Like, if you have a calling, answer it because it's yours. Like you said, like it is yours to answer.
Yeah.
So make space for that.
And we each have a different voice, and I think that that's really valuable. A lot of people won't speak up even if they have that calling because they're like, oh well, they're doing it or they're doing it, or it doesn't matter. I am a parenting mentor. I am one of thousands of parenting mentors, But the clients that come to me, that we build a rapport and we work together, there is something about that energy exchange that is what they need in that moment. It's different than other people because I'm different than other people. That doesn't make me better. I don't need to play the better than less than game. This is who I am and what I offer. And if it resonates with you, that's where you need to be. And that's where I need to be. And I think that these books have the power to resonate with so many people. And I'm really excited to help you hopefully get these spread far and wide.
I appreciate that so much.
So,
I've had similar conversations in my yoga trainings. Like
yeah.
I have a kids yoga teacher trainings. And also friends of mine who are yoga teachers who will be like, I don't know, I don't feel like I can teach today because I don't feel like I would be able to show up authentically. I said, no, what you're trying to do is show up as all love and light and be like this image of what yoga teachers are supposed to be instead of showing up authentically. Because if you show up and you're working through your stuff and you have some things that you need to work out, whatever you say, whatever postures you put your class into, all of that, as long as it's done intentionally, will be exactly what the people who showed up that day need as well. There's been so many times where I've walked in and I've been like, things are hurting. This happened in my life. Things are really not okay, but I am here and I'm here with you. And instead of putting it aside, I'm going to work through it with you while also holding space for you to work through your stuff, because your mat is your own little therapy session.
Yeah.
And people have been like, I never really thought of it that way. Or they'll be like, wow, I thought today was going to be terrible because I was in this mood, but it ended up being the best class I've ever taught. And so I think when we get out of our own ways and we show up as human, we give people permission to do the same. We make it a safe place to be raw and vulnerable and not okay. And when we do that, then things are a little bit better.
It is. And then we're teaching all of these kids how to do that. So they get to be the next group of adults that just do that. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Let's heal all those trauma wounds and end this ancestral.
That is what we are about. So these books, you know, I obviously work with parents, but I think that these books aren't just necessarily for parents. We talked a little bit about inner child. What about somebody who just knows a kid or knows of a kid or, you know, has heard of libraries? How can they support you? How can they help just because this cause is worth helping?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I do think it is important to get these books into the homes of children. But the populations who need these books the most are not going to have access to them unless we have other adults or organizations or businesses looking for tax write-offs that want to contribute to get these into the hands of people who wouldn't be able to purchase them themselves. We would love to see them in Title I schools, public libraries, psychologists' offices, child psychologists' offices.
I have a couple therapists to connect
mental
you
and behavioral health.
Glad you said that.
That'd be fantastic. So these are the things that we're looking for. Think about like foster care facilities, or you know how like police officers carry around like little stuffed animals to give to kids when they're removed from their homes or when they're going through a tough situation, or like TIP. Have you heard of TIP?
I haven't.
There's a organization of volunteers in Las Vegas who goes out to like crime scenes where people have died, and they sit with the loved ones and just be a presence in literally the toughest of these people's times of these people's lives. And sometimes children are involved in that, and to be able to have something to offer them to bring comfort in those moments would be so fantastic. So I know a lot of times like police officers carry stuffed animals and stuff to give to kids that they meet or that they have to remove from their homes or whatever as like a little comfort item. And I think it would be so cool if, you know, they could get one or all of the books instead, or in addition to.
Right. Because they can keep reusing that, you know, wherever they're going. They can have whichever adult they end up with, you know, reading that with them and helping them see other things other than this bad thing that happened to them, you know, and they need to be allowed to see that. They need to be allowed to talk about that. They need to be able to work through their trauma. And it's not to diminish that, it's to add to.
Exactly, because where else would they have been getting that unless they have the resources to see a therapist, to have a family coach, to, whatever those things are. Like,
Yeah.
I've heard so many times I was going to X, Y, and Z, or I was on this really bad path until, and all of those stories end with one adult who said that one thing that made you hold on.
Yep.
And that this could be that, or this could help our educators and our community be those.
Right. And to breathe life into those that are burnt out and struggling, because it's an imperfect system and there's a lot that are, but for them as the adults to get excited about something again and to have something beautiful to share in the midst of maybe a lot of like stress and chaos. And there's just so many ways that I believe this series is going to positively impact probably the world, but conservatively the country. So
thank you. Yeah, we'll start with our little corner of the world and we hope to grow from there.
yeah.
My first goal is to get a copy of all 4 books in every state.
Awesome.
In a public setting. So a library, a public school, something like that, and then to grow from that. I would love, love, love to be like, okay, we have them in a school here, we have them in a school there, and then grow from there. Because I just think it's really important that as a community of individuals who can spare maybe $100 to donate all 4 books to a school or a library or whatever cause is important to you, to offer that to the community of people who need it the most and wouldn't be able to achieve that without our help. So maybe it's I'm going to get one for my family or for my library as a psychologist or whatever. And then I'm also going to donate one to X, Y, and Z to help be a positive light, to light one more candle in what can seem to be a very dark time sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think your Kickstarter kicked off today, yeah?
Yes, it is live. It is happening now.
So when I put where all the places I post this, I'll make sure I include that link so people can click on it. And I assume that you have like socials that we can follow as well.
Yeah, right now I'm keeping everything because when I start to branch out, like I have the kids' books, I have yoga, I have my adult book, I have all of these things. And if I spread them out, I get lost.
Yeah.
Marketing media is not really my thing. So everything for now is posted on my personal pages.
Perfect.
So you can I post that stuff too, but you can follow me on Instagram at Ziya Nicole, which is a great place to start all of the posts, everything that as things progress, all of the updates will be there.
Awesome.
And then of course the Kickstarter link is gold right now. And then there's an Amazon link for the adult books if if anything that we've talked about or
now when you say adult books, there's a certain interpretation of that. Are you writing adult books or are these just books for adults because they're not 4 sentences per page?
Well, yes, because they're not 4 sentences per page, but also because there's not a lot of filtering going on.
Perfect.
If
I just want to be,
there would be a little
clear.
bar at the top that says contains descriptions of sexuals, whatever, sexuality and cursing or whatever.
Right.
So it is definitely intended for an adult audience. I have had people say, I am making my teenager read this because your story starts when you're a teenager and these are very real life things. And because I talk about, of course, if you haven't noticed by now, I talk about self-love and self-care and being our own loves of our lives so that we can begin to heal some of those trauma wounds and be in a place of readiness and acceptance, or if we're in a relationship, to strengthen those bonds, because when 2 people are together and they are continuing to work on themselves, they can also grow better as a couple.
Yeah.
So the first part of the book talks about my stories and how there's like a story about a relationship that I was in. And then there's a section called Pieces of Me that talks about what I learned through that time and what pieces of myself I decided to keep or let go of based on the things that I learned from that relationship. And then the second part of the book is about self-love, self-care, staying true to who you are and not losing pieces of yourself when you get into those relationships. Um, yeah.
That sounds beautiful. So I'll definitely include that link too, because I assume that, even if we're like, oh, I need these books for my kids, it doesn't hurt to also like spend some time loving for yourself too.
Yeah, and it's a pretty easy read because everything's like, okay, this is wrapped up. Like this chapter is about this relationship, and now that is, and I'm not like, oh, what happens next? So you can be like, okay, I read a chapter and then put it down and pick it back up at nap time or after the kiddos are asleep or
So what you're
whatever that
saying
might
is
look
this is
like. So a lot of
ADHD friendly.
it is ADHD approved. Yes, this is perfect for people who are like, I usually only listen to audiobooks. People who say that have also read my book and been like, okay, I was able to get through that because of the style of writing and the way that the chapters like conclude themselves.
I
So
love
yes.
that. That's awesome. I think that's really, really helpful to know going in because there are some books that are, whew, my brain has a hard time with. And I love to read, but some books I have to listen to because my brain gets overwhelmed. But when a book is ADHD friendly, then I'm like, cool, I can read what I can right now. I can do like chunks, and that makes it much more accessible for me. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. I
Very
am
good.
an audiobook person, so I couldn't justify writing a book that I wouldn't be able to read myself, but
Right.
also I will be working on recording the book very
Nice.
soon.
Very good.
I have all of the equipment now, so very soon there will be an audiobook version of the adult book,
Perfect.
the book for adults.
I'm sorry. I'm on Bookstagram and
I'm like,
there's
yes,
just
it's
so
both.
many. Yeah, there's so many that I was like, we should just probably clarify and just be really specific exactly what we mean here. Whatever people want to
About
read is their business,
relationships.
but they want
Yeah,
to know.
it is about relationships. So there is some like, some slightly spicy scenes that some of my family members went, I really love you and I loved your book, but I went ahead and skimmed that section because I don't need to know about my granddaughter's X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
And I'm like, just pretend it's not me. Everything will be fine.
And I love that you were able to share your story with so much authenticity because, the parents that were saying, like, I want my teen to read this, there's truth to that. It's really hard for some parents to share their true stories with their kids. There's a lot of fear wrapped up in that. But to have somebody who has been able to present, the good, bad, and the ugly, or the good, bad, and the beautiful, whatever way it goes, it makes it less scary, less overwhelming. It's like, oh, okay, so I don't have to have my whole life figured out right now. Like there's going to be ups and downs and twists and turns, and I probably can't actually predict everything that's going to happen from my seat here at 16. That's okay. I can
Yeah.
learn from this relationship, even if it's not a forever relationship.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things on that topic is that that saying everything happens for a reason. It's very, I feel like misused because I feel like it should be that everything that happens can have a purpose if you choose for it to.
Yeah.
So you can go in, you can work yourself through any situation and decide how you're going to use that information to better your and the lives of others. Like I was saying a second ago about the hysterectomy. I went through some times where I've been through a lot of stuff and I call them micro traumas. I was like, oh, I thought that was life. And people are like, no, dude, that's trauma over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh, I thought that was life. And so, I've always had this, like, everything's going to be fine. I can make it through anything type of outlook. And after my hysterectomy, I lost it. And it was the scariest thing to feel or not feel. And all I kept thinking was, when I get through this, I'm going to be even better for other people. I'm going to be able to relate to people in a way that I never was able to relate to them before. And therefore, I will be able to help them through that because I know what it's like to sit in the darkness. And I know what it's like to no longer have hope or that silver lining
Yeah.
and to still go, yo, we're doing this.
Mhm.
We're going to get up and we're going to keep going until we don't feel like this anymore. And we're going to find those little tiny things like these books or a little quote in a song
Mhm.
or a line in a book that we're listening to or reading that goes, I'm not alone. This is a very human experience. And I am okay. Right now, I am okay. And I can give myself space and grace to sit with this, to
Yeah.
move through it and not ignore it or push it away or think something's wrong with me because that makes it bigger and harder and darker.
Yeah.
So if I
Absolutely.
feel like I am right here, I am okay. And other people have been in this very similar situation and we're all okay.
Mhm.
That's big.
It's huge. I think it's such an important part of the work that we do to put our stories out there and to talk about things that maybe are uncomfortable. It lets other people get to that point where they can be like, oh, okay, so it's not just me. I'm not crazy. This is hard, and I can still be okay. Interesting. And it's not something that was as widely available before all of the socials. So
Because no one's talked about it.
Yeah.
Because it was taboo to talk about anything other than being happy and fine and great and pleasantries. Right. I'm fine, thank you. I'm great, thank you. You too, have a good day, you too, right? And to really sit for a second. And even a couple days ago, I had a friend message me and say, hey, how are you? And I instantly started typing back, I'm fine. And then I was like, thank you for asking me because I hadn't actually taken a moment to really process how I am today until you asked that question. So here are some things that are weighing heavy on my heart, and here are some things that are great. And all in all, I'm all right. Like, thank you for making me be present with myself for just a second.
I love that
because
response.
Now I feel lighter and better, right? Now I feel now that I said that out loud and now that I admitted to myself and took a second to process my body's response to things and the emotional reactions that I was feeling in that moment, now they're not as big or as scary. And now I feel a little lighter because like someone cared enough to say, hey, how are you?
Yeah. That's incredible. I did stop with the auto fine. But I hadn't quite pinpoint how I want to respond. And I think that's pretty darn close because it's like, thanks for asking that. I have been buzzing around. I hadn't actually considered.
Yeah.
And
or it's too many micro things that you're like, it would be easier just to say I'm fine.
Yeah.
Than to actually have to be like, wow, these things kind of suck today. Or wow, I've been really busy and haven't even taken a second for myself today. But once you bring awareness to it, then there's space.
Yeah.
Now there's a different space available to process or to change that or to make a little time to sit and breathe or whatever.
Which is also such a beautiful part of yoga.
Yeah.
To make space for these things.
That's actually something that I worry about a little bit when I talk about these books being yoga inspired, is because some people have negative associations to yoga.
Oh, okay.
There have been groups who have expressed to me that they can't do yoga, or their mom wouldn't let them do yoga, or so-and-so can't do yoga, or we're going to have to call it mindful movement because yoga's taboo or whatever, because of ideas around the idea of yoga, or the origins of yoga don't align with someone's beliefs or whatever that might be. So I think it's really important to note that I say yoga inspired because yoga really to me is a way of life, a way of living, a way of being present with yourself and with others and with nature, and um, a way of getting to a place of love and acceptance for yourself and for others. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's through asana or movement, which is what people usually associate yoga with, is the movement portion. But
Right.
that's only one part of yoga. And really it's about presence with yourself and checking in with yourself, and knowing that there's a place within all of us that is this place of like love and
I think that's
quiet.
amazing. I'm glad you were able to add that here at the end. Also, I'm gonna have to ask you to come back and have like a whole yoga discussion because that's new information to me. I didn't realize because I work with majority of the people that I work with have some form of trauma, and yoga is one of the things that often comes up as a means to reconnect to the body when it was safer to disconnect for 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm not a yoga instructor. I give that to people who have that training and I think they're incredible. And I tell people to find the person that just like really resonates. Like you feel it when you find somebody like that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even aware that there was pushback. It doesn't surprise me. It makes sense as you're explaining it, but I would love to sit and talk about some of the misconceptions and, offer maybe some more depth or some perspective or just a way of looking at yoga for what it can offer you, even if there's parts of it that maybe aren't your cup of tea, and that's okay. And my husband can't do downward dog. He's got an equilibrium issue. Okay,
Mhm.
there's lots of other things you can do. That's okay,
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I would love that. And I think that one of the things that I would like to do for this Kickstarter, just to kind of tie it back together, is to like offer a virtual yoga session for anyone who may be interested, and we can set like a, a abnormally, an abnormal price point for that class, that would, all of that money would go towards getting the books donated to a place of those people's choosings.
that's
But
so
at least they're
fun.
getting something back for themselves and getting a moment to connect with themselves and actually really absorb the good that they're doing for kids.
I
And
love
I
that.
want to I want to give something back to the community for
That sounds
helping
so
us reach.
awesome. What a great idea. I love that. I love that so much. So I will make sure that I include all of those links. I encourage everybody to follow you so that they can see all the updates as they happen. Maybe we can get like a update of your map as the books are growing and spreading. Because that would be super exciting. And yeah, anybody who knows of an organization or an office or a nonprofit or a senator who wants to sign some books and say, look, I'm giving to my community, whatever, help get in contact with us. Let us know so that we can spread these really powerful positive messages far and wide.
Yeah, and if anyone like that wants to get involved, we can do like videos of the book deliveries or the book signings or whatever it might be to the organization of that person's choice, and really make it like this very fulfilling experience, and obviously when a lot of people don't give freely, right? We give for something, whether it's to feel good, which is probably the most noble of them all, is because we want to do something good. We also want to feel that we did something good, right?
Right.
But there's also people who need tax write-offs or people who need the publicity or whatever the thing is. Doing good is doing good.
Right.
And our kiddos will benefit from that. And so all of it is commendable. And I'm totally cool. Let's make a video and like talk about it,
Yeah,
show
absolutely.
off this good you're doing.
Yeah. I think it's wise of you to call out all of the different ways and reasons that might be included in somebody's choice to give like this, because you know what? That's part of it. Let's just talk about it. Like it's part of it. Sometimes there is a financial benefit, and that doesn't take away from the benefit that the school or the library or the kids get when they get to receive this.
Right.
So we're okay with that. We want to make sure that
Yeah, good is good.
kids are getting
Yeah.
to hold these books in their hands. And whatever gets you to be part of that, that's legal, safe, still in the realm of, you know, those
Yeah,
things.
I have some boundaries.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. I
And in the
think this is
benefit
going
of
to
the
go really good.
kids, I appreciate you so much and all of your followers and listeners for taking the time out of their day to be with us
Yeah.
and to talk with us, really. And I look forward to any connections that come from this.
Me too. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Thank you, Ziya. I'm so honored to have you. And I look forward to talking to you again and talking to everybody else next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.